Avoidant people need you to leave. Here's why that's the most loving thing you can do. There's a truth we don't talk about often enough, especially in relationships that involve someone with an avoidant attachment style. The truth is, avoidant people often need you to leave. Not because they hate you, not because they don't care, but because they are addicted to emotional distance and terrified of what intimacy actually requires. And when you stay, constantly offering love, patience, and reassurance, you think you're helping. But you may actually be feeding the very fear that keeps them stuck. You may be confirming their worst belief, that love always chases, love overwhelms, love is pressure, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away, not as punishment, not to manipulate, but because your absence is the mirror they need, the space that might finally make them face themselves. Avoidantly attached people don't fear being alone. What they fear is being vulnerable while connected. They equate closeness with losing control. So every time you lean in, they instinctively lean out. They pull back, shut down, or go cold. Not to hurt you, but to protect themselves from an intimacy they were never taught to feel safe in. The paradox? Deep down, many of them crave closeness. They long for the safety and warmth of being understood. But they've also built their entire psychological survival strategy around avoiding it. That's why loving an avoidant person often feels like trying to hug a ghost. They're there, but you can't quite touch them. And the tighter you hold on, the more they disappear. When you stay in these dynamics too long, believing you can love them into healing, you start to bleed. You lose yourself trying to prove you're different from the people who hurt them. But in doing so, you play a role in their avoidance. You become the pursuer to their distancer. And this dynamic isn't just painful, it's repetitive. You keep giving, they keep resisting. You ask for connection, they withdraw, and round it goes until you're drained, anxious, and questioning your worth. Here's where the hard truth comes in. Sometimes your love becomes a wall they hide behind, and your presence becomes the excuse they use to never confront their emotional limitations. That's why leaving isn't cruel. It's clarity. Now let's be clear, leaving doesn't always mean forever. It means stepping out of the caretaker role and returning to your own center. It means no longer bending into emotional contortions to make someone else feel safe. Because real love isn't about proving your loyalty to someone who avoids you. Real love includes self-love, and that means knowing when enough is enough, when the same conversations keep circling, when your needs are consistently minimized, when their space becomes your emotional starvation. That's when love transforms. It becomes boundary, it becomes silence, it becomes release, not from anger, but from wisdom. Avoidants often learn their survival early in life. Parents who were intrusive, inconsistent, or emotionally unavailable. So they grew up believing closeness was either suffocating or unreliable. As adults, they repeat this pattern unconsciously. They attract partners who want connection, but don't feel safe enough to demand it. And you might be that partner, empathetic, loyal, full of hope. But when you ignore your own pain to keep the connection going, you become invisible to yourself. That's why walking away is not abandonment, it's realignment. It's telling the avoidant, I see your fear, but I won't let it consume me. And that boundary is often the first crack in their emotional armor. There's a myth that healing avoidance requires constant patience, that if you just wait long enough, love hard enough, or sacrifice deeply enough, they'll finally come around. But this thinking often traps people in emotional limbo. You're not loving them, you're managing them. And no one heals by being managed. People heal through self-awareness, through experience, through consequences. Sometimes your absence is the consequence that opens their eyes. Sometimes it's the silence after your exit that speaks louder than years of begging for connection. And yes, it might hurt them, but it also might free them. When you walk away from an avoidant partner, they may not chase you. That doesn't mean they don't care. It means they don't know how, or they're frozen in the very fear that has ruled them their whole life. That moment, when you finally stop trying, stop fixing, stop rescuing, is where your power returns. You stop acting from fear of loss and start acting from love for yourself. You realize that true love isn't about staying longer. It's about staying true. And when someone repeatedly chooses their comfort zone over real connection, that's not your cue to stay loyal. That's your cue to leave with dignity. The beauty of letting go is this. It creates space. Space for you to heal from emotional neglect disguised as patience. Space for them to sit with the emptiness they usually run from. And sometimes that emptiness is what they need to finally grow. Because avoidance rarely changes in comfort. They change in disruption. They need to feel the cost of their defenses. They need to experience life without the safety net of your presence. That's when the real work begins. Not always, but sometimes. And even if they don't change, you do. You become someone who doesn't settle for being half-loved. It's easy to feel guilty for leaving someone who is emotionally unavailable. You may think, what if they finally open up and I'm gone? But here's the truth. Love is not about waiting for someone to evolve. It's about meeting each other in readiness. And if you're the only one doing the emotional heavy lifting, that's not a relationship. It's emotional labor. You don't owe anyone a lifetime of hope at the expense of your peace. If they are meant for you, your absence won't destroy the bond. It will strengthen their desire to meet you differently. And if they're not, then leaving simply brings you closer to someone who can. Many people stay in avoidant relationships out of empathy. They see the wounds, the childhood trauma, the deep-rooted fear. But empathy without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. You end up loving someone more than they are willing or able to love you back. And that kind of imbalance becomes your wound. It teaches you to accept emotional starvation as normal. It trains your nervous system to settle for crumbs. That's why the decision to leave is often a rebirth. You're not giving up on love. You're finally choosing the kind that doesn't require you to disappear to keep it alive. Sometimes leaving is the first time you choose yourself without apology. The first time you stop explaining your worth to someone who couldn't see it. And in that moment, you reclaim something sacred. Your right to be met, not managed. Your right to be felt, not feared. Avoidant people need you to leave, not because they don't want love, but because they need to meet love where it actually lives. In openness, in presence, in risk. And as long as you keep cushioning their avoidance, they'll never get there. So leave. Not to abandon, but to awaken. In the end, you are not responsible for another person's healing. You are responsible for your own. And sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for someone who fears connection is to stop proving that you'll never leave, and instead lovingly walk away. Let them sit in the silence. Let them feel the weight of what was lost. Let them for once reach towards something instead of retreating from it. Because if they ever do find their way back, truly back, it won't be from fear. It will be from love. And if they don't, then you've still won. Because you chose truth. You chose peace. You chose you. So if you're in a relationship with someone avoidant, and your soul is tired, your voice is unheard, and your heart feels like it's always waiting, remember this. Your leaving isn't a failure. It's a form of love, a deeper love, one that honors their journey, but no longer sacrifices your own. And that kind of love, that's the kind that heals. Not just them, but you too.